What's up YouTube? Brian here back again with another high-end rod review, and today we're looking at a rod that really doesn't get talked about pretty much anywhere. It's really hard to find information on these particular models, but this is the GLX, the G Loomis GLX 894 FPR. So let's talk about the FPR thing real quick. So FPR stands for flip punch rod, I guess. FPR, flip punch. There's 4 models in the GLX line that are FPRs. They retail at a whopping $480. So the price point on these things is pretty high. There's a 894 and 895C, so a heavy and an extra heavy. So the 4 is heavy, the 5 is extra heavy. And then there's also 2, and these are 7'4", no 7'5". So these are 7'5", so the 894 and 895 FPRs are 7'5", and then there's 2 models that are the same powers but in a 7'11". So you can get a full-on 7'11" big old flipping stick. So this one is the lowest power and in the shorter model. So this is the 894. So what does the FPR mean? What does that mean? So if you look at an 894 and you look at an 894 FPR, it's all about the strength and stiffness in the blank. So the 894C is a pretty stiff rod, but the 894 FPR is an even stiffer rod. So it's more stiff. Now there is a little bit of tip flex in this bad boy, so you do have a little bit of tip, like not a ton, but man, this thing is a full-on broomstick once you get past that like second or third guide. So the FPR, you're just getting a much thicker, more stout rod. Now this thing only has double-footed guides up to the 3rd guide, which is pretty common for most flipping sticks. Like the Megabass Warhammer, you're going to get some of the other rods in the Megabass line, you're going to get the double-footed all the way up the guides. But a lot of flipping sticks like the X Pride or the Steez and the flipping sticks I played with, they are all very similar, where they have double-footed to the 3rd guide, and then it's regular guides up the train. So this particular rod has titanium SIC guides, has a full cork handle. The balance on this thing is not too bad. I have a Shimano Bantam on here, which is the reel I've been running on this thing. And with a Bantam, which the Bantam is a pretty freaking heavy reel, with the Bantam, this thing balances right at the lock nut. So balance-wise, if you put a big heavy reel on this thing, it's pretty good. Otherwise, it is pretty tip heavy, which is kind of shocking for how big the handle is. So for having such a big handle, having this thing not be super balanced is a little like surprising. But G Loomis has never, I don't think they counterweight any of their rods. So if they did, this thing would probably bounce a little better. So as far as fit and finish goes, this thing looks perfectly fine. For $480, it looks kind of pedestrian. All the GLX grips are designed by G Loomis. They make the GLX grips. These are not off-the-shelf grips from somewhere else. Some people do not like the trigger on GLX rods. The trigger is pretty sharp and it sticks up at a pretty aggressive angle. So some people, when they hold the GLX rod, they just don't like the way that the trigger kind of digs into their knuckle a little bit, because sometimes that trigger can be like right on your joint, and it is uncomfortable to some people. For me personally, it fits my hand well. But if you've never owned or used a casting GLX rod, that is just something to note, that the grip might not be exactly what you're looking for. So some people love it, some people really, really hate it. Personally, I don't mind. So you get a big chunk of cork up here, you get a full cork grip in the back. The cork on the GLX, unfortunately, isn't that great. This particular rod has had a lot of filler replaced, so you can put like wood glue or wood filler into this thing, sand it down, and then recoat it with some U40 sealant, which is what has been done on this rod. So I'll say the cork on the GLX for $480 kind of sucks. The handle is, some people love it, some people hate it. Doesn't fit some people's hands very well. The fit and finish up the blank is very boring. You get one little hit of color on this guy, but then the rest of them are all just black. The GLX rods in general are pretty boring and pedestrian as far as like looks and stuff. Now this is the 3rd GLX rod I've personally owned. I had an 852S, I had an 893C, and then I've had the 894 FPR. So I have had a history with GLX rods, and you know what? I don't own them anymore. Now some people love GLX rods. They say they're equally sensitive, if not more sensitive than the NRX. They are a little bit heavier. They do have the fully G Loomis in-house grips. Like the GLX spinning rods have a super weird grip that some people don't like, and then the casting rods have this strange, the trigger on the casting rods, or your mileage may vary. So anyway, The GLX rods for $480, I would have to say I would never pay MSRP for one of these things. But let's talk about this. I'm kind of going off in a little rants here and there on GLX in general. I didn't want to make this video like totally just about GLX rods in general. Let's focus in on this particular stick. So this is the 894C FPR. This thing is only rated to 1 ounce. So for a flipping stick, that's a pretty lightweight rating. I will say, in actually using this rod and flipping with it, I say ½ ounce is its sweet spot. As long as when you start to move up into 3/4 ounce with a trailer, that's when this rod gets a little sketchy. This definitely is not flipping an ounce. So I know it's rated up to 1 ounce. I would say 1 ounce might be a little much for this thing, but it definitely can. I'd say the sweet spot is ½ ounce. You definitely can go up to 3/8. I'm sorry, 3/4. So 3/4, half, and anything lower is fine with this rod. I would not approach 1 ounce. This rod is great for lighter flipping. So if you're flipping like not the super thick heavy stuff, but if you're flipping like grass, you're flipping some lily pads that aren't super thick, you're doing some mat fishing where you can punch through with a ½ ounce or 3/4, I will say that this rod does well. What's nice about this rod is that it's a lot of power and it's very stiff for a flipping stick in a 7'5" package. So if you're limited on boat space, like your rod locker isn't super big, or you're a kayak guy and you don't want a big 7'11" flipping stick hanging off the back of your kayak, or you have to throw your rods into your car or your truck and you can't really fit a 7'11" in like your Prius or your hatchback or something like that, I will say that the FPR models in the G Loomis line is a great option. Now, if you need to flip heavier, I would probably consider going up to the 5 power FPR rods instead of the 4. But if you're cool flipping ½ ounce, for the most part, I would say this rod is good. One other thing that this rod really can double as is it's a pretty good frog rod. So this can 100% double as an open water or even a pretty heavy cover frog rod. This, I would say, if you need a rod that you can run braid on, tie up a flipping hook, a ½ ounce weight, go flip some cover, then cut that off, throw on a frog, and go frog some stuff. This is definitely one of those rods that can kind of traverse frogging and flipping. I will say that because of the softer tip, the firm tip and the broomstick nature of this blank, I would say that you're not throwing moving baits on this. You're not throwing swim baits. You're not throwing swim jigs. You're not throwing spinner baits. This thing is really stout. So I would say that this is a frogging and flipping rod only. And as a flipping stick, it does have its own limitations. So the balance is okay. The fit and finish is okay. The cork is okay. For a flipping stick that's in 7.5 package, it's great. The sensitivity on it is perfectly fine. I flip with braid most of the time, so I don't know if you really need a super sensitive rod for flipping with braid because you can almost always feel when a fish comes up and grabs that bait in skinny water when you're flipping. As far as power-wise, when you do hook set a fish on this thing, you do get a lot of oomph, and the blank does have some nice flex to it, but it is pretty stiff. But you do got a soft enough tip where you can pin that fish in the cover and get them out. So I didn't really have any lost fish on this thing, nothing significant. So anyway, overall, I have to say the tricky part about this rod is the price. For me, I don't think this rod really deserves a $480 price point. Luckily, you can pick these things up used in the aftermarket for $300 or less. I've seen actually GLXs go for like $250 to $275 used. So if you can get this rod for like $300 or less, I say definitely check these out. Also, if you're in like high school or college fishing that are sponsored by Shimano, you can get these things at like 40 or 50% off through Shimano's like student angler portal. So I know a lot of people pick up these GLXs for like literally half price, and at half price, definitely these are great. So I don't like the MSRP for $400, but even at like 15-20% off, I don't know if this is a rod I would pick up. So I would say definitely check out the GLX FPR rods if you can find them at a heavy discount or if you can find them used. I don't think I'm going to keep this rod in my collection, unfortunately, because I have started to love the longer, heavier flipping sticks a little more because I tend to flip 3/4 of an ounce to an ounce. So having something that's kind of dedicated to flipping ½ ounce isn't really necessary in my lineup because I have some other flipping sticks that I like better that are a little heavier and bigger. So it was fun using this. I used this rod for an entire season, so this is not like a new rod to me. I've had it for a while. It's just not really getting the love it deserves. But overall, like I said, there's certain scenarios where I think this rod is really going to come in handy. So that's all I got to say about this one. If you got any questions, comments, please leave them in the bottom of the YouTube video. And until next time, We'll see you guys later. Thank you for watching. Much appreciated. Thank you.